What if real-life dragons, Komodo dragons, suddenly appeared in Florida? Imagine thousands of these ancient predators unleashed in the Sunshine State.
In an unprecedented move, Florida officials approved the release of thousands of Komodo dragons into select wildlife zones. The goal was ambitious: to control surging populations of invasive species that were damaging crops and ecosystems. It was a risky ecological experiment, but experts believed the dragon's natural predatory behavior could help restore balance. What followed sparked national debate and unexpected results that totally shocked everyone. The Komodo experiment. The state had been battling invasive species for decades. Iguanas eating gardens, pythons swallowing local wildlife, and rodents spreading faster than control programs could handle. Traditional solutions weren't working. So when biologists proposed releasing Komodo dragons, nature's ultimate predator, into controlled wetlands, officials saw it as a daring last-resort strategy. The idea was simple on paper. Komodo dragons could help keep invasive animal numbers in check. As apex predators, they would target small mammals, reptiles, and even carrion, acting as a natural cleanup crew in areas overrun by pests. The plan involved introducing a few thousand dragons into isolated zones across Florida, mostly near rural wetlands where human activity was minimal. If successful, it could restore balance to an ecosystem that had been spiraling out of control for years. At first, the move sounded outrageous. Komodo dragons are native to Indonesia, creatures of myth and power, rarely seen outside zoos. But from a purely ecological standpoint, their instincts made them the perfect fit. They're opportunistic hunters that eat nearly anything they can overpower, from rodents to deer. Their venom, a mix of toxins and bacteria, weakens prey through blood loss and infection. Once they bite, survival chances drop fast. In the wild, even large animals don't stand much of a chance. The project wasn't meant to be reckless. Biologists used advanced tagging systems to monitor every released Komodo, tracking their movement and interactions with other wildlife. The hope was that they would settle into Florida's swampy environments much like they do on their home islands, thriving without disrupting native predators too heavily. Early reports claimed success. Rodent populations in the initial release zones dropped. Crop damage lessened. For a moment, the plan looked like a scientific breakthrough. But what fascinated people even more than the results were the dragons themselves. Komodo dragons aren't just big lizards. They're evolutionary marvels.
A true giant roams one of the most fearsome reptiles to ever walk the earth, the Komodo dragon, Varanus komodoensis.
Adults can grow over 10 feet long and weigh as much as a human. Their bite force, though not as crushing as a crocodile's, is enhanced by their venom and serrated teeth designed to tear flesh like a saw. They can sprint short distances, swim across rivers, and even climb when young. For Florida, they represented both beauty and danger in one package, a prehistoric creature reborn in modern America. Their behavior is as captivating as it is intimidating. Komodos hunt with patience, stalking quietly and waiting for the perfect strike. They can detect blood from miles away and use their long, forked tongues to sense movement in the air. When one attacks, others often follow, forming loose feeding groups that can strip a carcass in minutes. Scientists describe them as both intelligent and unpredictable, traits that make them fascinating to study, but nearly impossible to fully control. Over time, the Komodo population adjusted to Florida's terrain. They favored the warmer, wetter regions where food was abundant and competition minimal. Fishermen and farmers began spotting them near canals, moving silently through the water like alligators. Their presence caused equal parts awe and concern. What's best and shocking to everyone. Surprisingly, the Komodo release showed promising results in its first year. Rodent and invasive lizard populations dropped by nearly 60% in monitored zones. Farmers in affected areas reported fewer crop losses, and local disease-spreading pests declined significantly. The dragons adapted faster than expected, establishing stable territories without major conflicts with native predators. Environmental teams noted healthier vegetation recovery in areas once overrun by pests. While long-term effects remained under review, early data suggested the Komodo dragons had achieved what years of chemical control and trapping couldn't, restoring a fragile balance to Florida's struggling ecosystem, thanks to these apex predators. And if Florida could release Komodo dragons to fix a pest problem, what else has the state quietly set free? Other known animal releases. Florida has always had a complicated relationship with its wildlife. While the Komodo story captures the interests of some, the state's history of animal releases isn't entirely fiction. In reality, wildlife authorities have long engaged in controlled releases, efforts to repair ecosystems, protect endangered species, or balance populations thrown off by human expansion. Some were small-scale rescues, others massive reintroduction programs spanning decades. What connects them all is Florida's role as both a sanctuary and a laboratory for life. Take manatees, for example, those slow-moving, gentle sea cows that have become symbols of Florida's coastal life. Each year, dozens of injured or sick manatees are rescued from boating accidents or cold snaps, taken to rehabilitation centers like the Lowry Park Zoo or SeaWorld's rescue facilities. After months or even years of treatment, they are released back into the wild with satellite tags for monitoring. When these events happen, locals gather by the water to watch. It's emotional, hopeful, and, for once, a Florida wildlife story that doesn't end in chaos. The same goes for bald eagles and sea turtles. Decades ago, both species were on the brink of collapse due to habitat loss and pollution. Conservation programs stepped in, raising hatchlings in protected areas until they were strong enough to fend for themselves. Now, each release is treated like a small miracle, a sign that Florida can coexist with its wildlife, not just battle it. Entire generations of turtles now return to the same beaches where they were once released, repeating a cycle of life the state nearly destroyed. But not every release is about recovery. Some are about control. Florida's vast landscapes, from wetlands to pine forests, require careful population management. Overcrowding in one area can lead to starvation, disease, or ecosystem collapse. To prevent that, officials sometimes relocate or reintroduce native species. Deer, wild turkeys, and even alligators are occasionally moved to underpopulated regions to restore natural balance. It's a delicate operation, often done quietly to avoid public backlash. Helicopters airlift deer, trucks ferry turkeys through the night. Alligators are tagged and released into safe zones away from neighborhoods. Then there's fish, maybe Florida's most managed group of all. The state's hatcheries are constantly restocking lakes and rivers with species like bass, trout, and catfish. Some of it's ecological, but a lot is recreational. Fishing is big business here. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, FWC, releases millions of fish yearly to support local economies and sustain the sport. Most anglers don't think about it when they cast a line, but chances are that wild catch once started its life in a state-run tank. Amphibians get similar treatment, though for a different reason. Frogs and salamanders are often raised in labs for educational or research purposes, then released into carefully monitored wetland zones to study pollution effects and biodiversity. It's all part of a larger experiment in environmental stewardship, a reminder that human intervention isn't always destructive when done right. Still, every action has a reaction. Even the best-intentioned releases can ripple through ecosystems in unexpected ways. Relocating animals sometimes brings disease to new areas. Restocking fish may disrupt food chains. And when you mix Florida's tropical climate with a revolving door of species, native and non-native, the lines between controlled and chaotic blur fast. That's partly why the Komodo story, as wild as it sounds, struck a nerve. Floridians already know the state experiments with its environment. They've seen scientists tracking sharks by satellite, rangers moving gators by airboat, and volunteers carrying turtles by the dozens to the sea. So when someone claims the government released a few thousand lizards, it doesn't sound like science fiction. It sounds like something Florida might actually do. In truth, Florida's wildlife agencies have a tough job. They walk a line between conservation and control, restoration and reputation. They've released countless animals, from rehabilitated eagles to hatchery bass, and each one represents a gamble that nature will cooperate. Sometimes it works beautifully. Sometimes it doesn't. What's constant, though, is the state's willingness to intervene. Florida doesn't leave nature alone. It manages, monitors, and manipulates it, all in the name of balance. That's both its greatest strength and its biggest flaw. And yet, for all its careful planning, not every release has gone according to script. Some weren't planned at all. That's where Florida's wildlife story takes a darker, stranger turn into the creatures that never should have been here in the first place. Unintended animal invasions. If Florida has a gift for anything, it's turning good intentions into wild headlines. For every carefully planned release, there's been an invasion no one saw coming. Unlike the manatees or sea turtles that find their way home, these species didn't belong here in the first place, and once they arrived, they refused to leave. The Everglades, especially, has become a living museum of misplaced creatures. Decades of pet trades, backyard escapes, and careless releases have reshaped Florida's ecology into something closer to a real-life Jurassic Park. The villains of this story aren't scientists or officials. They're the unintended consequences of human curiosity. Let's start with the most infamous, the Burmese python. Oopsie. Yup, snakes. In the 80s and 90s, exotic pet ownership boomed. Baby pythons, imported from Southeast Asia, were sold as harmless novelties. They were small, manageable, and fascinating until they weren't. A full-grown Burmese python can reach over 20 feet long and swallow a deer whole. When owners realized they couldn't handle them, many simply let them go. Florida's climate did the rest. The Everglades, humid and full of prey, became paradise. By the 2000s, scientists estimated tens of thousands were thriving in the wild, breeding unchecked. Today, they've nearly wiped out entire populations of raccoons, rabbits, and birds. Rangers have pulled them from drainage canals, golf courses, and even suburban backyards. Then came the green iguanas, another case of pet store escape artists turned urban invaders. Originally brought from Central and South America, they're now so common in South Florida that people barely react to seeing them sunbathing on rooftops. Cute at first, but destructive. Their burrows weaken seawalls and sidewalks, their droppings corrode metal, and their appetite for ornamental plants drives homeowners crazy. There's no organized effort to remove them anymore. They're just part of the scenery, like palm trees or tourists. Tegu lizards joined the list not long after. Larger, smarter, and more adaptable than iguanas, they quickly became a serious concern. These black and white giants, native to Argentina, can survive cold snaps that other reptiles can't. That means they spread farther north, raiding nests of endangered species like the gopher tortoise. Officials have launched bounty programs, paying residents to catch them, but for every one trapped, another seems to appear. The lionfish invasion began underwater. Likely released from home aquariums, They took over Florida's coral reefs with alarming speed. Their venomous spines keep predators away, and they devour smaller fish crucial to reef health. Divers now organize lionfish derbies, competitive hunts, to remove as many as possible, turning ecological cleanup into a sport. Then there are the Cuban tree frogs, small but mighty nuisances that arrived by accident in shipping crates. They outcompete native frogs for food, clog plumbing, and swarm porch lights in the summer. Locals describe them as sticky intruders that scream like toddlers when handled. They've become an eerie soundtrack to Florida nights. And if that's not enough, consider the feral hogs. Brought centuries ago by Spanish settlers, they've multiplied into the hundreds of thousands. They root up crops, destroy wetlands, and spread disease. Some weigh over 300 pounds and can charge at startling speeds. Hunters have tried to control their numbers for years, but they breed faster than anyone can keep up. Rural Floridians joke that the hogs will outlive everyone, and they might be right. What makes all this so uniquely Floridian is that none of it was part of any official plan. These weren't government experiments or ecological tests. They were accidents, the byproducts of people mixing fascination with irresponsibility. A pet here, a transport crate there. One careless decision multiplied by millions of years of evolution. And yet, each species that adapts to Florida adds another chapter to the state's strange mythology. A place where the wild never stays in its lane. By now, state agencies have accepted that total control is impossible. They run educational campaigns about invasive pets, enforce strict import rules, and host amnesty days, where owners can surrender animals without penalty. But despite the efforts, the damage is done. Florida is a patchwork ecosystem, half native, half imported, entirely unpredictable. And perhaps that's why stories like the Komodo dragon rumor stick so easily.
World's largest lizards, the only place you'll find these dragons anywhere in the world. Incredible, most prehistoric scenes here.
The idea that giant lizards could roam the Everglades doesn't sound like a joke. It sounds like tomorrow's headline. Because in Florida, the unbelievable often becomes real, and the real often sounds made up. If the state has learned anything, it's that nature always finds a way to fill the gaps humans leave behind. And in Florida, those gaps seem to keep getting wider. Could all these strange animal stories be the reason people call Florida that scary state? The wild state. Florida has always walked a thin line between paradise and pandemonium. It's not just the hurricanes, gators, or sinkholes. It's the sense that anything can happen here, and usually does. The state's geography, culture, and climate combine to create a perfect storm for chaos, both ecological and human. That's why it's earned its reputation as America's wildest state, not just because of its wildlife, but because of how people and nature constantly clash and adapt in unpredictable ways. First, there's the climate. Florida's subtropical environment is practically an open invitation for life of all kinds. The endless humidity, sunshine, and wetlands make it one of the most biodiverse regions in the U.S. Everything grows faster here: plants, animals, even bacteria. A lizard dropped off a boat in Miami can find food, water, and shelter within minutes. An escaped bird from a pet store might never have to migrate again. The state's mild winters mean invasive species don't die off like they might elsewhere. It's a land where the line between native and foreign blurs quickly. Then there's the human factor. Florida's population is a mix of retirees, immigrants, transplants, and adventurers. People from everywhere, bringing their own animals, plants, and habits with them. That diversity makes it vibrant, but also volatile. Pet stores sell exotic reptiles, backyard breeders experiment with hybrids, and collectors import rare fish. combine that with hurricanes destroying homes and zoos, and it's easy to see how all kinds of creatures end up loose in the wild. One storm, one flood, one broken fence, and a new species joins Florida's never-ending ecosystem experiment. The state's landscape also plays a big role. The Everglades, with its maze of mangroves and marshes, is nearly impossible to patrol completely. It's a refuge for both endangered species and escaped pets. Rangers joke that if you set something loose in the Everglades and come back a year later, it'll either be gone forever or have built a thriving population. The sheer size and density of the wetlands make control efforts nearly futile. Helicopters, boats, and drones can only do so much when the terrain itself seems designed to hide secrets. Florida's wild reputation isn't just about the animals, though. It's cultural. Over the years, the phrase "Florida Man" became shorthand for bizarre headlines: alligators in drive-thrus, snakes in toilets, people wrestling wildlife like it's a sport. Some of those stories are exaggerated, but they reflect a real truth. Florida is a place where the ordinary and the absurd live side by side. People grow up surrounded by wildness, and it shapes how they see the world. When you live somewhere that casually hosts panthers, pythons, and tropical storms, your definition of normal shifts. Even the state's laws and economy reinforce this wild character.
And that's remarkable when you think about it. You have government, you have conservationists, you have ranchers, and they're all coming from different points of view, but they're working together.
Bipartisan anything.
Wildlife tourism is big business. Airboat tours, alligator farms, dolphin encounters. There's a fine line between conservation and showmanship, and Florida often blurs it. It's one of the few states where you can legally hunt invasive species, feed exotic animals, or visit sanctuaries that double as roadside attractions. It's equal parts science and spectacle, and while some criticize that approach, others see it as Florida's way of embracing its chaos instead of fighting it. The constant balancing act between people and nature gives the state a kind of raw energy. Every year, new species arrive, sometimes intentionally, sometimes not, and the ecosystem reshuffles itself. It's unpredictable, sometimes dangerous, but always fascinating. You can't fully tame Florida, you can only adapt to it. That's why when wild headlines surface, like "Florida releases Komodo dragons," that's not impossible. Because this is a place where invasive snakes hunt alligators, parrots nest in city parks, and a morning jog might mean dodging a gator on the trail. The line between myth and reality is blurry here, and maybe that's part of the appeal. Florida's wild label isn't just a joke or a meme. It's a reflection of how deeply entwined humans and nature have become. It's messy, loud, unpredictable, and somehow still beautiful. Whether it's a manatee gliding through a canal or a python coiled under a bridge, the state never lets you forget that nature still has the upper hand. And that's what makes Florida endlessly fascinating. A living reminder that the wild isn't something out there in the jungle. It's right here, in our backyards. Because in Florida, the line between civilization and wilderness is just a suggestion. Florida's wildlife stories remind us that truth can be stranger than fiction, and sometimes wilder too. Whether it's Komodo dragons or native rescues, the Sunshine State never stops surprising the world. Stay curious, stay informed, and don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable true stories.